Businessman pretends to be homeless at his own company, but only the cleaning lady shows compassion. Richard Thompson was desperate. His technology company had become a toxic environment he no longer recognized. Rumors reached him about employees being humiliated, about a climate of unhealthy competition that destroyed people every day. At 52, the businessman felt he had lost control of everything he had built with so much sweat. That's when he had an idea that would change his life forever. On Monday morning, Richard left his penthouse apartment in the Upper East Side, wearing old, torn clothes. He had put gel in his hair to make it oily and dirty, rubbed dirt on his face and hands. His personal assistant, Jennifer, was the only person who knew about the plan. She had helped create the perfect disguise, buying clothes at a thrift store in Queens. The businessman positioned himself at the entrance of the modern mirrored building in downtown, where the headquarters of Crestwave Technologies was located. He sat on the cold floor, leaning against the glass wall, with a plastic cup in front of him. It was just after 8 in the morning when the first employees began to arrive. The commercial director, Michael Anderson, passed by him with a look of disgust. 2 interns laughed quietly, making cruel comments about the smell coming from the homeless man. The marketing manager, Catherine Wilson, quickened her pace and avoided looking directly at Richard, as if he were invisible. Then he saw her, a woman of about 40, brown hair tied in a simple ponytail, wearing a blue cleaning uniform. She carried an old backpack and a plastic lunchbox. Unlike everyone else, she stopped. "Good morning," she said with a gentle smile. "Are you hungry?" Richard looked up, pretending to be shy. "Yes, miss. It's been 2 days since I've eaten properly." Without hesitation, she opened her lunchbox and shared half of her turkey sandwich with him. She also took a half-full water bottle from her backpack. "Here, you can drink. It's still cool." "Thank you very much, you are very kind," murmured Richard, genuinely moved. The woman knelt beside him on the dirty sidewalk. "My name is Deborah Miller. And you?" "Richard. I mean, Rich. You can call me Rich." "Nice to meet you, Mr. Rich. Look, I work here in this building. If you need anything, a glass of water, a piece of bread, you can look for me, okay? I come in at 8 and leave at 5. As they talked, Richard watched through the glass as the employees of his own company looked at them with disdain. Some pointed and laughed. A group of executives approached the door and stood there, clearly bothered by the presence of the homeless man. "Deborah!" shouted a harsh voice. It was Greg Johnson, the cleaning department supervisor. "Stop making a scene there and come to work. And you," he pointed to Richard, "get out of here before I call security." Deborah stood up slowly, but not before whispering to Richard, "Don't mind him, Mr. Rich. He's just a bitter man. I'll come back at lunchtime to see how you're doing." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Richard sat there for another 3 hours watching the movement. Dozens of employees passed by him. Some threw coins into the plastic cup with an air of superiority, as if they were doing a great charity. Others simply ignored him completely. Around 11:30, a young blonde intern approached. Richard recognized Emily, who had been hired a few months ago. "Sorry to bother you," she said quietly, "but there's a coffee shop nearby. Would you like me to bring you some coffee?" "That would be very kind of you, miss." When she came back with the hot coffee, Richard noticed she had bought a donut, too. "Thank you for accepting it," she said. "My grandmother always said helping others is the most important thing in life." But Emily's kindness didn't go unnoticed. Michael Anderson saw her handing over the coffee and immediately called her for a private conversation. Richard couldn't hear what was said, but he saw the look of fear on the girl's face when she went back inside the building. At lunchtime, Deborah appeared again. This time she brought a whole lunchbox. "I couldn't stop thinking about you here going hungry. I made this food at home this morning. It's simple but made with love." She sat on the ground next to him, not caring about her clean uniform. "You don't have to do this," said Richard. "You've already done too much." "Of course I do. We're all brothers and sisters in this world, Mr. Rich. My mother, God rest her soul, always said you never know when you might be helping an angel." While he ate, Deborah told him about her life. She had been widowed 5 years ago when her husband had a heart attack while working as a construction worker. She was raising 2 teenage children on her own, Matthew, who was 16, and Emma Grace, who was 14. "It's hard sometimes," she admitted. "I work here in the morning, clean 2 houses in the afternoon, and still take care of my sick mother-in-law. But God never abandons those who have faith." Richard felt ashamed of his own wealth hearing this woman speak with such dignity about her daily struggles. "And the boss is here? How do they treat you?" he asked, pretending to be curious. Deborah let out a deep sigh. "Look, Mr. Rich, I'll be honest with you. There are good people here, like Emily, who brought you coffee. But there are plenty of bad ones too. Greg, my supervisor, is always yelling at us. Catherine from marketing once called me stupid in front of everyone because I didn't understand a fancy word she used. And the company owner? What's he like?" "Oh, I've never seen him in person. They say he's a rich man who only thinks about money. Lives in a fancy penthouse and doesn't even know we exist. But you know what? I'd rather believe he's a good person who just doesn't know what's happening down here." Deborah's words hit Richard like a punch to the stomach. He really didn't know anything. He had isolated himself so much in recent years that he had completely lost touch with his employees' reality. During the afternoon, the situation got worse. The security manager, Benjamin Harris, approached with 2 security guards. "Look here, bum," he said sharply. "You're bothering our clients. Either you leave nicely, or you'll leave the hard way." "He's not doing anything wrong." Deborah had appeared out of nowhere, carrying cleaning supplies. "The sidewalk is public property." "Nobody asked your opinion, Deborah," growled Benjamin Harris. "Get back to work before you get into trouble." "No, I won't be quiet. This gentleman is a person just like any of us. He has a right to be here." "Deborah, please," Richard tried to intervene. "I don't want you to have problems because of me." But it was too late. Benjamin Harris wrote something in a little notebook and gave Deborah a threatening look. "We'll see who's going to have problems here." That night, Richard returned home completely shaken. Jennifer was waiting anxiously to hear about his first day. "Mr. Richard, how was it? Did you discover anything?" "Jennifer, it was worse than I imagined. Much worse." He told her about Deborah, about the cruelty of the other employees, about young Emily who had been reprimanded for showing kindness. "And now? Are you going to give up on the plan?" "Not at all. Tomorrow I'll go back. I need to see how far this goes." The next morning, Richard returned to the same spot. Deborah arrived as always with her warm smile and more food to share. "How did you spend the night, Mr. Rich? Were you able to sleep?" "Yes, I did, Deborah. You're very kind." But something was different that day. Richard noticed hostile looks coming from inside the building. During the morning, 3 different employees approached him with strange offers. First was Greg Johnson, Deborah's supervisor. "Listen here, buddy," he said quietly. "There's a woman in there who's being very nice to you, isn't she? I'll pay $50 if you tell everyone she offered you drugs." Richard was shocked. "What do you mean?" "It's just a little white lie. Deborah has been annoying me for a long time. If you say she offered drugs, she'll be fired on the spot. How about it?" "I can't do that. Deborah is a saint." $100 then. It's my final offer." Richard pretended to consider the offer but refused. Greg left frustrated and furious. An hour later, it was Michael Anderson's turn. "Look here, my friend," said the commercial director with a fake smile. "You seem like a smart person. How about making some easy money?" "What are you talking about?" "There's a cleaning lady who's been very inconvenient lately. If you say she stole something from you, I'll give you $200. Richard could hardly believe what he was hearing. "Which employee?" "Deborah. She's been meddling where she shouldn't. A theft accusation would be perfect to get rid of her." "Sorry, sir, but I can't do that. Deborah has only treated me well." Michael got irritated. $300? It's my final offer." "No." The commercial director left muttering something about ungrateful beggars. But the worst offer was yet to come. Late in the afternoon, Catherine Wilson, the marketing manager, approached with an offer that left Richard horrified. "Listen carefully," she said coldly. $500 if you say that cleaning lady sexually harassed you." "What?" "You heard right. Make up any story. Say she touched you inappropriately. With your word against hers, who do you think they'll believe?" "Are you crazy?" "I would never do that." $1,000 then. That's a lot of money for someone in your situation." Richard stood up abruptly. "I said no." Catherine smiled coldly. "Everyone has a price. You just haven't found yours yet." That night, Richard couldn't sleep. He called Jennifer at 2 in the morning. "Jennifer, I need you to do a complete research on all the company executives. I want to know everything about them. Their personal lives, their spending, everything." "Did something serious happen?" "Worse than serious. I discovered my company is controlled by sick people, and Deborah is being targeted because of her kindness." On the third day, Richard arrived at work even earlier. Deborah was already there, waiting with a thermos of hot coffee and grilled bread. "I brought coffee from home today," she said cheerfully. "I thought you'd like it." "Deborah, you don't need to do this. You already do too much for me." "Nonsense, Mr. Rich. It's little compared to everything Jesus did for us." They talked for almost an hour. Deborah said that Matthew, her oldest son, had gotten a scholarship for a technical course in computer science. "I'm so proud of him," she said with shining eyes. "He's always been very smart. He wants to work with computers like the people here inside." "I'm sure he'll succeed," said Richard, genuinely moved. "And Emma Grace is helping take care of her grandmother. She's such a responsible girl. Sometimes I worry if I'm not asking too much of them, you know. They barely had a childhood because of our difficulties." Richard felt a pang in his heart. This woman sacrificed everything for her children and still found time and energy to care for a stranger on the street. But during the day, he noticed the persecution against Deborah was intensifying. Greg called her out 3 times for trivial things. Benjamin Harris made up a complaint about her leaving a restroom dirty, even though Richard had seen that she had cleaned everything perfectly. The worst moment came at lunchtime. Deborah was coming down the stairs when she tripped and fell, hurting her knee. Several people saw, but only Emily came over to help. "Oh my, Deborah, you're bleeding," said the worried intern. "It's nothing, dear. Just a little scratch." But Richard had seen everything from outside. The fall wasn't an accident. Someone had spilled cleaning product on the stairs on purpose. When Deborah went out for lunch, limping slightly, Richard confronted her gently. "Deborah, I need to tell you something." "What is it, Mr. Rich?" "I saw what happened on the stairs." "That was no accident." Deborah took a deep breath. "I know, but what can I do? I need this job." "Why are they doing this to you?" "Because I defended you. Because I won't accept seeing people being mistreated. But don't worry about me, Mr. Rich. I've been through worse." Richard felt guilty. His experience was putting Deborah at risk. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to leave a like, and especially to subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. That afternoon, something happened that changed everything. Richard was sitting in his usual spot when he saw an elegant woman approaching from inside the building. It was Caroline Thompson, his 28-year-old daughter, who worked as the company's financial director. Caroline spoke briefly with some executives and then looked directly at Richard through the glass. He shrank back, trying to hide, but she kept watching with a strange expression. A few minutes later, she came out of the building. "Excuse me," she said politely. "Are you all right? Do you need medical help?" Richard was surprised. It was the first time someone from his family had shown real compassion for another person. "I'm fine, miss. Thank you for your kindness. My name is Caroline. I work here inside. I saw that one of our employees has been kind to you. Deborah is an angel on earth. Is that so?" Caroline seemed genuinely interested. "Tell me how she has been treating you." Richard told her everything: the food, the conversation, the protection from the other employees. Caroline listened in silence, with an increasingly serious expression. "And the other employees? How do they treat you?" Richard hesitated. He didn't want to involve Caroline in the company's problems. "Some are kind, others not so much." "I see. Look, if anyone mistreats you, you come find me, okay? I'll be keeping an eye out. When Caroline went back inside the building, Richard saw her talking intensely with the executives. Her expression had completely changed. She was clearly furious. The next day, the atmosphere in the company was different. Richard noticed frantic movement through the windows. Several meetings took place during the morning. Deborah arrived later than usual, and Richard noticed she was particularly tense. "Is everything all right, Deborah?" "Oh, Mr. Rich, I think this will be my last day here." "What do you mean?" "They called me for a meeting this afternoon. They said there are some irregularities in my work. I'm almost sure they're going to fire me." Richard felt an intense anger rising in his chest. That wonderful woman was going to be punished for being kind to him. "Deborah, that is so unfair." "That's just how life is sometimes, Mr. Rich. But don't you worry about me. God always opens a door when he closes another." During the afternoon, Richard saw Deborah enter the meeting room, along with Greg, Benjamin Harris, and two men in suits he didn't recognize. The meeting lasted almost 2 hours. When she came out, she was visibly shaken, but trying to maintain her composure. She came directly to speak with Richard. "Rich, they came to talk to me because they said I was neglecting my duties by stopping to chat with people on the street." "And what did you say?" "I told the truth that helping others is part of my nature and that I never let my work slide because of it. But they didn't want to hear it." "Did they fire you?" "They gave me an ultimatum. They said if they see me talking to you again, I'll be let go on the spot." Richard was devastated. His experiment had backfired against the one person who truly deserved protection. "Deborah, I'll leave. I don't want you to lose your job because of me." "Absolutely not, Rich," she said firmly. "You're not going anywhere. You need help, and I'm going to keep helping you, no matter what it costs." "But you could lose your job." "So what? Jobs come and go, but abandoning someone in need? I wouldn't do that even if you paid me." Richard was deeply moved by that woman's courage and determination. It was the exact opposite of everything he had become over the years. That night he made a decision. He called Jennifer. "Jennifer, tomorrow I want you to call all the directors and managers for an emergency meeting at 4 o'clock. "Everyone, Mr. Richard?" "Everyone. And I also want you to call Deborah, the cleaning staff member I told you about." "Is she going to attend the meeting too?" "Yes, she is. And one more thing, Jennifer. Tomorrow is going to be a day that changes this company forever." On the 5th day of the experiment, Richard arrived at the building knowing it would be the last. Deborah greeted him with the same kindness as always, despite all the pressure she had been under. "How are you feeling today, Rich?" "Different, Deborah, very different." They talked about her children. Matthew had started his technical course and was loving it. Emma Grace had gotten a perfect score on a math test. "I'm so proud of them," said Deborah. "They're the reason I live. They're lucky to have a mother like you." "Nonsense. Any mother would do the same." Richard knew that wasn't true. Deborah's generosity was rare, special. During the morning, he watched the intense activity inside the building. Several people arrived for the afternoon meeting. He recognized some important faces from the business world. At 3:45, Jennifer came out of the building and approached Richard. "Rich," she said, keeping up the act, "I need to speak with you." Deborah was nearby and grew worried. "Is everything all right?" "Yes," replied Jennifer. "I just need him to come with me for a few minutes." Richard followed Jennifer to a nearby public restroom, where she had a change of clean clothes waiting. "It's time, Mr. Richard." He changed quickly, combed his hair, and became the well-dressed businessman he had always been. When he came out of the restroom, Deborah was waiting outside, clearly confused. "Rich, you look different." "Deborah, I need to tell you the truth. My name isn't Rich. It's Richard Thompson. I am the owner of this company." Deborah was silent for a long time, processing the information. You're the boss?" "I am. And I need you to come with me to a meeting right now. There's a lot that needs to be cleared up." "But I can't go into a director's meeting. I'm just in cleaning." "Deborah, you are so much more than that. You are the most important person in this entire company." They entered the building together. The employees were shocked to see the well-dressed homeless man walking alongside the cleaning lady toward the conference room. When Richard opened the conference room door, he found all the executives seated around the mahogany table. Their expressions ranged from confusion to horror as they recognized who he was. "Good afternoon, everyone," said Richard calmly. "I'd like you to meet Deborah Miller, our new human resources consultant." The silence in the room was deafening. "Mr. Richard," stammered Michael Anderson, "I don't understand what's happening." "Of course you do, Michael. For 5 days I pretended to be homeless outside our company. I wanted to see the true character of our employees." Greg Johnson was pale as a ghost. "And do you know what I discovered?" continued Richard. "That you are horrible people. Michael, you tried to bribe me to frame Deborah for theft. Catherine, you wanted me to make up that Deborah sexually harassed me. Greg, you offered me money to say she offered me drugs." Deborah stood beside him, still processing the whole situation. "You tried to destroy the reputation of the only person in this company who showed true humanity. You tried to fire her for showing compassion." "Mr. Richard," Catherine tried to explain, "we didn't know that." "Exactly. You didn't know who I was, and you showed me who you really are. Michael, Catherine, Greg, and Benjamin Harris, you're fired, effective now." "You can't do this," shouted Michael. "We have contracts. You can sue all you want. I have recordings of every bribery attempt." Richard turned to Deborah, who was clearly in shock. "Deborah, I want to offer you the position of Director of Human Resources for this company." "But Mr. Richard, I didn't go to school for that. I barely finished high school." "You have something far more valuable than a diploma, Deborah. You have character. And that's what this company needs. But I don't know how to manage people. You know how to treat people with dignity. That's the most important thing." Caroline, who had watched everything in silence, finally spoke up. "Father, I fully agree with your decision. Over the last few days I watched how some employees treated that man at the door. It was shameful. You knew it was me. I suspected by the second day. You have some very distinctive mannerisms." Richard smiled at his daughter. It was good to know she approved of his decisions. "Deborah, do you accept my proposal?" Deborah looked at all the faces around the table. Some showed approval, others clear hostility. "Can I think about it until tomorrow?" "Of course. But in the meantime, I want you to know you are already promoted, and your salary will be 10 times what it is now." That night, Deborah went home completely dazed. She told her children everything, who at first thought she was joking. "Mom, are you sure it wasn't a dream?" asked Matthew. "I'm sure, son. Mr. Richard said he wants me to take care of the people who work at his company." "But Mom, do you know how to do that?" asked Emma Grace, worried. "I don't know, honey, but I do know how to treat people well, and maybe that's what he's looking for." Richard also spent the night thinking. He called Jennifer. "Jennifer, I think I made a mistake." "How so, Mr. Richard?" "I offered a very big position to Deborah. She might not be able to handle the pressure." "Mr. Richard, with all due respect, I think you're underestimating her. In the last 5 days, she showed more leadership and courage than any of our executives." "You're right. But what if the other employees don't accept her? Those who don't can also look for another job." The next morning, Deborah arrived at the company with a decision made. She found Richard in his office. "Mr. Richard, I accept your proposal, but with a few conditions." "Go ahead." "First, I want to continue getting to know every employee personally, from the intern to the director. Second, I want to implement a direct channel where anyone can report problems without fear of retaliation. Third, I want the company to invest in training so that people like me can grow professionally." Richard was impressed with the maturity of the proposals. "I accept all your conditions. Do you have any others?" "Yes, I do. I want Emily, that intern who was kind to you, to be promoted. She showed she has a good heart." "Done." In the first few months, the transition wasn't easy. Many employees questioned Deborah's authority. Some resigned because they couldn't accept taking orders from a former cleaning lady. Richard supported Deborah in every situation. When a manager disrespected her publicly, he was fired on the spot. When some employees tried to boycott her initiatives, Richard made it clear that any resistance would be treated as insubordination. But Deborah won over most employees with her human approach. She implemented flexible hours for parents, created a free psychological assistance program, and organized a cafeteria where executives and employees ate together. 6 months later, Crestwave Technologies was unrecognizable. Productivity had increased significantly. Employee turnover dropped drastically. The company began receiving Best Place to Work awards. Richard watched everything with pride. He had regained not only his company, but his own humanity. One day, Deborah knocked on his office door. "Mr. Richard, may I speak with you?" "Of course, Deborah, come in. I wanted to thank you for everything you've done for me and my family." "I should thank you, Deborah. You saved this company." "Actually, Mr. Richard, I think we saved each other." Richard smiled. She was right. "Deborah, may I ask a personal question?" "Of course. Why did you stop to help a stranger on the street? Most people wouldn't do that." Deborah thought for a moment. "You know, Mr. Richard, when my husband got sick, we went through very difficult times. There was a time when we didn't even have money for food, and it was strangers who helped us. A neighbor who brought milk for the children, a church lady who paid for our medicine, a shopkeeper who gave us food on credit." She paused, looking out the window. "I learned that kindness isn't about who deserves it or not. It's about who we are inside, and I always wanted to be the kind of person my mother would be proud of." Richard was moved by the simplicity and depth of Deborah's words. Your mother would certainly be proud. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. 2 years after the company's transformation, Richard decided to publicly share his experience. The story gained national attention. Companies from across the United States began seeking Deborah for consulting. She created an institute that trained executives on humanized leadership. Matthew, now graduated in computer science, developed an app for anonymous reporting of workplace harassment. Emma Grace, inspired by her mother, decided to study psychology to help people. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. Former employees who were fired tried to sue the company. Some competitors spread rumors about corporate populism. There were moments when Richard doubted his decisions. The worst moment came when Michael Anderson, the former sales director, gave an interview on a television program attacking Richard and Deborah. "That was a staged performance," he said. "Richard Thompson destroyed a solid company because of sentimentality. And that woman has no qualifications for the position she holds." The interview caused a negative impact. Some clients cancelled contracts. Investors grew concerned. Richard gathered the entire leadership team. "Team, we're facing a credibility crisis. Do some of you think we should reverse our changes?" There was a tense silence in the room. Deborah was the first to speak. "Mr. Richard, if the price of treating people with dignity is losing a few contracts, I think it's worth it." One by one, all those present expressed their support. Caroline was categorical. "Dad, this is the best company I've ever seen. If some clients don't understand our values, they're not the right clients for us." The crisis passed in a few weeks. New clients appeared, attracted precisely by the company's values. Employees from other companies began asking to work at Crestwave. Richard realized he had created something bigger than a company. He had created a movement. 3 years later, during a ceremony where Crestwave received the award for Most Humane Company in America, Deborah took the stage to accept the honor. "I want to dedicate this award to all the people who work with dignity, even when no one is watching," she said emotionally. "And I want to say that sometimes a simple gesture, like sharing a turkey sandwich, can change the world." In the audience, Richard was in tears. Matthew and Emma Grace, now young adults, applauded proudly for their mother. After the ceremony, Richard and Deborah walked together to the place where it all began, the sidewalk in front of the company building. "Deborah, do you regret anything?" "Not a thing, Mr. Richard. And you?" "Only one thing, that it took me so long to discover who I really wanted to be." They stood there for a few minutes, watching the employees leave work. Everyone greeted Richard and Deborah with genuine respect. "You know what makes me proudest?" said Deborah. "It's seeing that we changed not just a company, but the lives of hundreds of families." Richard agreed. The fair wages, decent benefits, and respectful environment had transformed all the employees' lives. Deborah, can I ask one more question? Of course. Do you still remember that first day when you offered me half of your turkey sandwich? Deborah smiled. How could I forget? At that moment, did you know I was someone important? No, Mr. Richard. But that didn't matter. Why? Because every person is important no matter where they live or how much money they have. Richard reflected on those words. For decades, he had measured people's worth by their bank accounts, social status, and power. Deborah taught him that true value lies in character. Deborah, if you could go back in time and know from the first moment that I was the owner of the company, would you do anything differently? Yes, I would. What? I'd bring more food, she said, laughing. You were so skinny. Richard laughed too. Deborah's simplicity always surprised him. 5 years after the transformation, Crestwave Technologies had become a worldwide success story. Universities studied the humanized management model implemented by Richard and Deborah. Matthew had become the company's technology director, developing innovative solutions that put human needs first. Emma Grace, with a degree in psychology, coordinated the employee wellness program. Caroline took over as company president, allowing Richard to dedicate himself to social projects. He created a foundation that offered microloans to people in vulnerable situations. Deborah became an international speaker, sharing her story in various countries. She always made sure to share her speaking fees with community social projects. During a talk in Chicago, a young executive asked Deborah, "Ms. Deborah, what was the most difficult moment in this entire transformation?" Deborah thought carefully. It was when I realized that changing a company is easy compared to changing mindsets. There were times when some employees treated me poorly just because I had been a cleaner. And how did you handle that? With patience and example, I showed through actions that competence has nothing to do with diplomas or social background. Another person asked, "What would you say to someone who is just starting out in life and feels undervalued at work?" I'd say never lose your humanity, no matter how others treat you. Your time will come, but only if you keep being a good person. After the talk, Deborah returned to New York City. At the airport, she was approached by a young executive. "Excuse me, Miss Deborah, I'm from Crestwave Technologies' competitor." Deborah smiled kindly. "Hello, dear. How can I help you?" "I wanted to know if you would consider coming to work for our company. We offer double your current salary." "Thank you for the offer, but I decline. May I ask why?" "Because money can't buy purpose. I'm where I want to be, doing what I believe in." The executive insisted. "But it's a very generous offer." "My son," Deborah said affectionately. 5 years ago, I was earning minimum wage cleaning bathrooms. Today, I earn much more than that, helping people find happiness at work. I wouldn't trade that for anything." On the flight back, Deborah reflected on her journey, from janitor to human resources director, from unknown to international speaker. But what made her proudest wasn't the titles or the money. It was knowing she had helped hundreds of people regain their dignity at work. It was seeing former employees who had been fired for toxic behavior turn their lives around and become better people. When she got home, she found Matthew and Emma Grace preparing a special dinner. "What are we celebrating?" asked Deborah. "Your talk went viral online, Mom," said Emma Grace. "It already has over 2 million views. And most importantly," Matthew added, "dozens of companies are reaching out wanting to implement the same humane management model." Deborah smiled, but not with personal pride. She smiled, thinking about how many people could be helped. "Do you know what this means?" she said. "What, Mom?" "That the seed we planted is sprouting. Other people will get the chance to work with dignity." That evening, Richard called Deborah. "I saw your talk online. It was moving." "Thank you, Mr. Richard. I always get nervous speaking in public." "Deborah, I want to ask you a serious question." "Go ahead." "Do you still see me as a boss or as a friend?" Deborah laughed affectionately. "Mr. Richard, you are my friend, but you'll always be my boss too. That's how mutual respect works." "Thank you for everything, Deborah, for teaching me who I should be. And thank you for giving me the chance to show who I always was." After hanging up, Deborah stood by the window watching the street activity. People returning from work, hurried, tired. How many of them were unhappy in their jobs? How many were mistreated by their bosses? She thought about the man she had met on the sidewalk 5 years earlier, a beggar who was actually a lost businessman. Two strangers who had changed each other's lives. The next day, Deborah received an unexpected call. It was from the mayor of New York City. Ms. Deborah, I would like to invite you to coordinate a municipal project for humanizing public services. It's a tempting offer, Mr. Mayor, but I can't leave Crestwave Technologies. The project would be in partnership with private companies. You could continue your current work and still help improve public services. Deborah became interested. She imagined how many people could benefit if public agencies adopted more humane practices. May I think about the proposal? Of course, but I hope for a positive answer. New York needs people like you. Deborah discussed the proposal with Richard. Deborah, I think you should accept. Your work could benefit millions of people. But what about the company? The company is in excellent hands. Caroline and you have built a solid structure. And look, Deborah, I think the time has come for you to fly higher. What do you mean? I want you to apply for a position on the city council as a representative of the workers. Deborah was shocked. Mr. Richard, I don't understand politics. You understand people. That's what matters. But I don't have enough education. Deborah, you have a PhD in humanity. It's the most important degree. For weeks, Deborah thought about the proposal. She consulted her children, spoke with other employees, asked for advice from trusted people. Matthew was direct. Mom, you have the chance to help thousands of people. It would be selfish to stay just at the company. Emma Grace agreed. Mom, you always said our mission is to help others. This is your chance to help on a larger scale. Deborah gathered her courage and decided to run. Her campaign was different from all the others. She didn't promise grand projects or attack opponents. She simply committed to treating every citizen with dignity. On election day, Deborah won by a surprising margin of votes. People from all social classes had voted for her. In her first speech as a city council member, Deborah was direct. I didn't come here to play politics. I came to do what's right. My only promise is that every citizen will be treated with respect, regardless of their social status. Richard was in the audience, proud as a father watching his daughter graduate. In the following months, Deborah implemented significant changes in public service. She created mandatory kindness protocols, trained public employees, established direct communication channels with the population. The results appeared quickly. Complaints about poor service dropped drastically. Public satisfaction with government services increased significantly. During a council session, an opposition council member questioned Deborah. Ms. Deborah, don't you think you're spending too much time on service frills when you should focus on projects? Deborah stood up calmly. Council member, respecting people isn't a frill, it's an obligation. And when a citizen is treated well, they leave feeling important. That's priceless. But projects create jobs. Kindness also creates jobs. Dignified service attracts businesses, tourists, investments. A city where people feel respected grows naturally. Deborah's response went viral on social media. Videos of her speech were shared millions of times. Politicians from other states began inviting Deborah for consultations. She accepted some projects, always focusing on humanizing public services. During a trip to Washington, D.C. for a meeting with senators, Deborah encountered Michael Anderson, the former director who had been fired years earlier. Deborah, can I speak with you? Deborah became tense but maintained her composure. Of course, Michael. How are you? I wanted to apologize for what I did years ago, and also for what I said on television. I've already forgotten, Michael. No, you don't understand. I want to apologize because I finally understood that you were right. Deborah was surprised. How so? After I left Crestwave, I worked at several companies. They were all like I was before. Cold, cruel, inhuman. I was fired from all of them because I couldn't adapt to that toxic environment anymore. And now I work at a non-profit that serves homeless people. I earn a tenth of what I used to, but I'm much happier. Deborah smiled genuinely. I'm happy for you, Michael. Deborah, can I ask you a question? Of course. How were you able to forgive me so easily? I was horrible to you." Deborah thought for a moment. "Michael, holding a grudge is like carrying rocks in your backpack. It only hurts the one carrying them. I prefer to travel light." Michael was moved by the response. "Thank you, Deborah, for everything." On the flight back to New York, Deborah reflected on the encounter. Michael had completely changed. The experience of being rejected by the market had made him more human. Had his termination been too cruel? Deborah concluded that it hadn't. Sometimes people need to lose everything to discover what truly matters. 10 years after their first meeting on the sidewalk, Richard and Deborah reunited for a celebratory dinner. Present were Caroline, Matthew, Emma Grace, and their respective families. "Deborah, do you remember what my biggest fear was when I started that experiment?" asked Richard. "What was it?" "That you would discover who I was and change your attitude toward me." "And if I had changed? Then I would have known that kindness can be bought. But you proved there are incorruptible people." Deborah blushed at the compliment. "Mr. Richard, may I confess something?" "Of course. I suspected you weren't an ordinary homeless man since the second day." "How so?" "Your hands were too clean for someone living on the street, and you spoke too well." Richard was surprised. "And why didn't you say anything?" "Because it didn't matter who you were. What mattered was that you needed help. Even knowing I could be dangerous. Everyone can be dangerous, Mr. Richard, but I'd rather risk helping someone who doesn't need it than fail to help someone who does." Caroline intervened in the conversation. "Deborah, may I ask a personal question?" "Of course, dear." "Do you regret any decision you made in these 10 years? Deborah thought carefully. "I don't regret anything I did, but I regret some things I didn't do." "Like what?" "I should have given more opportunities for some people to change. Sometimes I was too quick to give up on those making mistakes." Matthew disagreed. "Mum, you gave too many chances to many people. Sometimes you need to be firm." "Maybe, son, but I'd rather err on the side of too much compassion than too little." Emma Grace changed the direction of the conversation. "Mom, what was the most emotional moment of these 10 years?" Deborah smiled, remembering. "It was when I received a letter from a Crestwave Technologies employee saying she had stopped taking depression medication because she was happy at work." "And the hardest?" "It was when I discovered a manager was harassing interns. I had to report someone I had helped grow in the company." Richard added, "Deborah always prioritized protecting the vulnerable, even when it was painful." "And what do you hope for the next 10 years?" asked Caroline. "I want to see the humane management model adopted by more companies. I want all people to have dignity at work." "Just that?" Deborah laughed. "And I want to see my grandchildren growing up in a better world than the one we found." During dessert, Richard made a toast. "To Deborah Miller, who taught me that true wealth isn't in the bank, but in the hearts of the people we touch." Everyone toasted emotionally. "And to you, Mr. Richard," replied Deborah, "who taught me that courage sometimes means pretending to be who we are not, to discover who we truly are." When the night ended, Richard and Deborah walked again to the sidewalk where it all began. Now there was a commemorative plaque at the site. Here began a revolution of kindness. "Deborah, may I ask you one last question?" "Of course." "If you met another homeless person today, would you do the same thing?" Deborah didn't hesitate. "I would. As many times as necessary." "Why?" "Because we never know when we're helping an angel in disguise." Richard smiled. 10 years later, Deborah remained the same genuine person who had shared a turkey sandwich with a stranger. "Deborah, thank you for saving my soul." "Thank you for saving my life, Mr. Richard." They hugged right there, on the sidewalk where two different worlds had met and created something extraordinary. End of story. So, dear listeners, what did you think of this transformation story? Did Deborah make the right decision by helping a stranger even without knowing who he was? Share your experiences about kindness at work in the comments, and don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories.